Yeah, simile used here is appropriate. One cannot capture the blowing wind, and it is even more difficult to capture the turbulent mind. The easiest way to control the mind, as suggested by Lord Chaitanya, is chanting Hare Krishna, the great mantra of deliverance, in all humility. The method prescribed is Sa Vai Manaha Krishna Padaravindayo. One must engage one's mind fully in Krishna. Only then will there remain no other engagements to agitate the mind.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Asamsayam Mahabaho Manodurnigraham Chalam Amyasena Tukonteya Vairagyena Chigriyate. Go ahead.
Lord Shri Krishna said, O mighty armed son of Kunti, it is undoubtedly very difficult to curb the restless mind, but it is possible by suitable practice and by detachment. Purport. The difficulty of controlling the obstinate mind as expressed by Arjun is accepted by the personality of Godhead, but at the same time he suggests that by practice and detachment it is possible. What is that practice? In the present age, no one can observe the strict rules and regulation of placing oneself in a sacred place, focusing the mind on the super soul, restraining the senses and mind, observing celibacy, remaining alone, etc.
Etc.
By the practice of Krishna consciousness, however, one engage in 9 types of devotional service to the Lord. The first and the foremost of such devotional engagement is hearing about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings. The more one hears about Krishna, the more one becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna. By detaching the mind from activities not devoted to the Lord, one can easily learn Vairagya. Vairagya means detachment from matter and engagement of the mind in spirit. Impersonal spiritual detachment is more difficult than attaching the mind to the activities of Krishna. This is practical because by hearing about Krishna, one becomes automatically attached to the Supreme Spirit. This attachment is called Paresanubhava, spiritual satisfaction. It is just like the feeling of satisfaction a hungry man has for every morsel of food he eats. The more one eats while hungry, the more one feels satisfaction and strength. Similarly, by discharge of devotional service, one feels transcendental satisfaction as the mind becomes detached from material objectives. It is something like curing a disease by expert treatment and appropriate diet. Hearing of transcendental activities of Lord Krishna is therefore expert treatment for the mad mind, and eating the foodstuff offered to Krishna is the appropriate diet for suffering patient. This treatment is the process of Krishna consciousness.
Okay, I'm noting down how many times he said hearing in this purport. Hearing about Krishna. So far, I am at...
I see one.
Well, this is a key.
I'm at 4, yes. Yeah, 4 times.
I see 2.
Yeah,
Now I see 3.
right.
Oh, the 4th one's really down.
Right. So he mentions it 4 times. This hearing is, he says, the first and foremost of such devotional engagements is hearing, Shravanam, about Krishna. This is a very powerful transcendental method for purging the mind of all misgivings.
The one more hears about Krishna. The one more becomes enlightened and detached from everything that draws the mind away from Krishna.
Yes. Okay, so text 36. Asamsayatatmana yogo dusprapya iti me mati vasyatmana tuyatata sakyo avaptum upayataha sakyo vaptum upayataha. For one whose mind is unbridled, self-realization is difficult work. But he whose mind is controlled and who serves by appropriate means is assured of success. That is my opinion. Okay, Krishna 1, go.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead declares that one who does not accept the proper treatment to detach the mind from material engagement can hardly achieve success in self-realization. Trying to practice yoga while engaging the mind in material enjoyment is trying to ignite a fire while pouring water on it. Yoga practice without mental control is a waste of time. Such a show of yoga may be materially lucrative, but it is useless as far as spiritual realization is concerned. Therefore, one must control the mind by engaging it constantly in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Unless one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, he cannot steadily control the mind. A Krishna-conscious person easily achieves the result of yoga practice without separate endeavor, but a yoga practitioner cannot achieve success without becoming Krishna-conscious.
Good. Arjuna uvacho ayati shadayo peto yogach chalita manasa aprapya yoga samsiddhim kam gatim Krishna gacchati. Okay, Kushi, your turn.
Arjuna said, O Krishna, what is the destination of the unsuccessful transcendentalist? Who is the beginning?
Who in the
beginning takes to the process of self-realization with faith, but who later desists due to worldly mindedness, and thus does not attain perfection in mysticism. Purport: the path of the self-realization or mysticism is described in the Bhagavad-Gita. The basic principle of self-realization is knowledge that the living entity is not this material body, but that he is different from it, and that his happiness is eternal life, bliss, and knowledge. These are transcendental, beyond both body and mind. Self-realization is sought by the path of knowledge, by the practice of the eightfold system, or by bhakti yoga. In each of these processes, one has to realize the constitutional position of the living entity. his relationship with God, and the activities whereby he can reestablish the lost link and achieve the highest perfectional stage of Krishna consciousness. Following any of the above mentioned these three methods, one is sure to reach the supreme goal sooner or later. This was asserted by the Lord in the second chapter. Even a little endeavor on the transcendental path offers a great hope for deliverance. Out of these three methods, the path of Bhakti Yoga is especially suitable for this age because it is the most direct method of God realization. To be doubly assured, Arjuna is asking Lord Krishna to confirm his former statement. One may sincerely accept the path of self-realization, but the process of cultivation of the knowledge and the practice of the eightfold yoga system are generally very difficult for this age. Therefore, despite constant endeavor, one may fail for many reasons. First of all, one may not be sufficiently serious about following this process. To pursue that transcendental path is more or less to declare war on the illusionary energy. Consequently, whenever a person tries to escape the clutches of the illusory energy, she tries to defeat the practitioner by various allurements. Conditioned soul is always allured by the mood of material energy, and there is every chance of being allured again, even while performing transcendental disciplines. This is called yoga kalita manasa, deviation from the transcendental path. Arjuna is inquisitive to know the results of deviation from the path of self-realization.
Very good. Kachin nobhaya vibrastas chinabram ivanasyati apratisto mahabaho vimudho brahmanapatiko.
O mighty armed Krishna, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success and perish like a riven cloud with no position in any sphere? Purport: there are two ways to progress. Those who are materialists have no interest in Materialists have no interest in transcendence. Therefore, there are more interested in material advancement by economic development or in promotion to the higher planets by appropriate work. When one takes to the path of transcendence, one has to cease all material activities and sacrifice all forms of so-called material happiness. If the aspiring transcendentalist fails, then he apparently loses both ways. In other words, he can enjoy neither material happiness nor spiritual success. He has no position. He is like a riven cloud. A cloud in the sky sometimes deviates from a small cloud and joins a big one. But if it cannot join a big one, then it is blown away by the wind and becomes a non-entity in the vast sky.
Mama, what does that mean?
Wait.
What?
What does that mean?
Non-entity.
Non-entity? He loses his individuality. He stops being a person. But he's talking about the cloud. He's not talking about people. He's talking about the cloud. He's not talking about people.
Example is the cloud. The Brahmana Pathi is the path of transcendental realization through knowing oneself to be spiritual in essence, part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, who is manifested as Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. Lord Shri Krishna is the fullest manifestation of the Supreme Absolute Truth, and therefore one who is surrendered to the Supreme Person is a successful transcendentalist. To reach this goal of life through Brahman and Paramatma realization takes many, many births. Bahunam Janmanam Ante. Therefore, the supermost path of transcendental realization is Bhakti Yoga or Krishna consciousness, the direct method.
What this verse means? See, Arjuna's he's a little bit apprehensive here because he's thinking that, look, if I decide to follow what Krishna says and give up my normal way of life to become a devotee, but if I don't succeed, then I'm a two-time loser. I'm no longer going to enjoy material life, and I failed in spiritual life. You see his point?
Yeah.
So, because there's no guarantee he'll succeed spiritually. So, that's why he's saying, does not such a man who is bewildered from the path of transcendence fall away from both spiritual and material success? In other words, he turns away from material success to succeed in transcendental life. But if he doesn't succeed in transcendental life, then he lost both.
Yeah.
Right?
Prabhuji, but we say that it should be balanced, right? We are also in the material world, right?
No, that's not what we're saying here. It's not what's going to be said here.
No, but we earn, we go to office, we do everything in the material world, but
Yeah.
thinking about Krishna every time, so that is how we maintain the balance.
Yes, but it's not what's going to be made. The point being made here is a little different. Wait, and you'll see. Okay. So, he's saying he compares it to a riven cloud. Riven means cut, something cut and separated, right? So a small part of a big cloud that separates from the big cloud, unless it joins another cloud, it'll eventually dissipate. What is a cloud? A cloud is
Like a bunch of rain, which is super light.
well, it's a bunch of water particles that are very spread out. That's why it floats. Although a big cloud has approximately 1 million pounds of water, but because the individual particles of rain, not exactly drops, they're smaller than raindrops, are spread apart so much, and there's enough air between them, it can be held up. When the air, when the cloud is lighter than the air underneath it, it's being held up.
When a riven cloud becomes a non-entity, does it just explode or something?
No, it means that when the smaller portion of the cloud separates from the big portion of the cloud, if it doesn't join another cloud, it'll just keep spreading out until it disappears. The moisture is still there, but its existence as a cloud disappears because the particles of the water become even more separated. So you no longer see a cloud. It disappears.
But there's a cloud. Yeah.
Huh?
Is there still a cloud there?
No, there's still water there.
Does the water just fall?
No, it just spreads out more. See, that to make a cloud it's an engineering miracle. The sun evaporates water from the ocean, right? From rivers also, but mostly from the ocean, and then the water is condensed. It's not condensed. It becomes a vapor, and then the vapor rises up. And when there's enough vapor in a certain, let's say, way, you see the cloud. You actually see the white cloud, right? And it's being held together, but it's lighter than the air because there's space between every particle or every minuscule drop of water. So it's no longer a vapor exactly. It becomes a little more condensed than a vapor, but not exactly a full raindrop. That's why I say it's an engineering miracle. And then the wind blows it. And then you see the clouds moving, right? But sometimes a part of the cloud may separate. A small part may separate from the cloud. And if it doesn't join another cloud or come back to the cloud, it'll just disappear. It's still there, but you can't see it because the particles of water separate even more. Okay. Good. So now we're going to find out more about this. We have to answer your question, right? Etan me samsayam Krishna chetum arhasya se sataha tvad anya samsayasyasya chetanahi upapadyate. This is my doubt, O Krishna, and I ask you to dispel it completely. But for you, no one is to be found who can destroy this doubt. In other words, he's saying, my doubt is, you asked me to give up material life and become a devotee. But what if I fail as a devotee? I will fail in material life and I'll fail in spiritual life. Therefore, I'm a loser, right? So he has this doubt, right? He's not sure if he can succeed in spiritual life. Krishna is the perfect knower of past, present, and future. In the beginning of the Bhagavad-Gita, the Lord said that all living entities existed individually in the past, they exist now in the present, and they continue to retain individual identity in the future, even after liberation from the material entanglement. So he has already cleared up the question of the future of the individual living entity. In other words, the living entity can never be like the riven cloud who loses its identity. You understand? The soul is eternal. It's eternally a person also. So it can never be destroyed. So he already cleared up the question of the future of the individual living entity. There's always going to be a person in the future. That's for sure. Now, Arjuna wants to know the future of the unsuccessful transcendentalist. No one is equal to or above Krishna, and certainly the so-called great sages and philosophers who are at the mercy of the material nature cannot equal him. Therefore, the verdict of Krishna is final and complete answer to all doubts, because he knows past, present, and future perfectly. But no one knows him. Krishna and Krishna consciousness and Krishna conscious devotees alone can know what is what. So Arjuna understands that only Krishna can clear this doubt in his mind. So I'll read the next one too, and then we'll continue reading. Shri Bhagavan uvacha partanai vehana mutra vinasastasya vidyate nahi kalyana kritkaschit durgatim tatagachyate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O son of Prita, a transcendentalist engaged in auspicious activities does not meet with destruction either in this world or in the spiritual world. One who does good, my friend, is never overcome by evil. So this is a very important verse. And this is Krishna's answer. And now we'll read the purport. It's a long purport, and Prabhupada takes the time to explain. In Srimad Bhagavatam 1.5.17, Sri Narada Muni instructs Vyasadeva as follows. Tyakvaswadharmam charanamupujan harir bhajan apaktvo tapatet tato yadi Yatra kva vabudram abud amusyakim kovarta apto bhajatam swadharmataha. If someone gives up all material prospects and takes complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's no loss or degradation in any way. On the other hand, a non-devotee may fully engage in his occupational duties and yet not gain anything. So in other words, if a person says, I'm going to live in the material world and do all my duties, I'll be a good person, I won't cause trouble to anyone else, and I'll do all my duties perfectly. That person is a loser. Okay, they lived somewhat of a moral life, but they're a loser because they did nothing for Krishna. On the other hand, if you take the Krishna consciousness and don't succeed, you haven't lost anything. Why? Look at chapter 2, verse 40. Nahabhikama nastosti patijayo na vidyate swalpam apyasya dharmasya jayate mahato bhayat. That verse says, second chapter, 40th verse,
In this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear.
yes, in this endeavor, meaning in devotional service, there's never any loss or diminution. Diminution means it means the same thing as loss. It means whatever you've done is never lost, and it's never diminished. It's not that, let's say you buy something and then you send it back, and then they deduct 20% from the sale price, and they say it's restocking. It's a restocking charge. Because you send it back, they have to put it back into their stock. That takes time. Time is money. Therefore, you lose 20%. Right? Even though you return the product intact. Not all companies do that, but there are a bunch of companies that do that.
There was another verse where Krishna says that if we reach a particular point in this life, so in next life we will start from the...
This is the verse.
Oh, this is the verse?
This is the verse. And a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. Okay, you read this purport. Go ahead.
Activities in Krishna consciousness or acting for the benefit of Krishna without expectation of self-gratification is the highest transcendental quality of work. Even a small beginning of such activities finds no
impediment means obstacle.
Nor can that small beginning be lost at any stage. Any work begins on the material plane has to be completed, otherwise the whole attempt becomes a failure. But any work begins in Krishna consciousness. Begun in Krishna consciousness has a permanent effect, even though not finished. The performer of such work is therefore not at a loss, even if his work in Krishna consciousness is incomplete. 1% done in Krishna consciousness bears permanent results, so that the next beginning is from the point of 2%. Whereas in material activity, without 100% success, there is no profit. A Jamil performed his duty in some percentage of Krishna consciousness, but the result he enjoyed at the end was 100% by the grace of the Lord. There is a nice verse in this correction in Sri Bhagavatam 1.5.17. Oh, can you read the verse?
Tyaktva charanam ubujam harer bhajan apakpota patet tato yadi yatrakva vabhadram amud amusyakim kovarta apto bhajatam swadharmata. It's the same verse in the other purport.
Okay.
We just read it in 640 in the same verse. Go ahead.
If someone gives up his occupational duties and work in Krishna consciousness and then fall down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part, and what can one gain in one perform
his material activities
perfectly? Or as the Christian says, what profiteth a man if he gains the whole world yet suffer the loss of his eternal soul?
So now if you compare the translation in 240 with that in 640, you'll see it's slightly different, and for a good reason. Okay, we'll continue. Go ahead. Srimad Bhagavad-Gita Granth Raj ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go to Premanandi.
I don't know, I see you sleeping in Sundays.
Yashomati Nandana Brajabara Nagara Katakokula Nandana Kana. Yeah. Can you give me kartas? KP, can you give me kartas? Can you give me kartas? Okay. Yashomati Nandana Barabara Nagara Gokula Nandana Kana. Yashomati Nandana Brajabara Nagara Gokula Nandana Kana. Gopi Paranadana Madana Manohara. Ramana Vedana. Amala Harina Maya Vilasha. Vipina Purandara Navina Nagara Bora. Shivadana Subhasa. Parajana Palana Surakulana Shana. Nanda Godana Rakobala. Govinda Madhava Navanita Taskara. Sundararanda Gopala. Yamuna Tatatara Gopi Vasanahara. Sarasika Kripa Maya. Sri Radha Vallabha Vrindavana Natapala. Bhakti Vinodashaya. Yashomati Nandana Brajabara Nagara Gokula Nandana Kana. Jaya Radha Nila Madhav Radha Nila Madhav Radhe. Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Jagannatha Jaya Baladeva Jaya Subhadra. Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Sita Ram Jaya Lakshmana Hanuman.
Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Stotra Sutta Shishya Divine Grace of Charanarvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivrajacharya Stotra Sutta Shishya Divine Grace Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Gok Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sadi Gaur Bhakti Vrinda Ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. पुरुषोत्तम क्षेत्र रघुनाथपुरी धाम की जय, गंगा माई की जय, यमुना माई की जय, भक्ति देवी की जय, तुलसी देवी की जय, सामवेद भक्तों की जय, निताय गौर प्रणाली हरि हरि बोल. All good samudroid Hare Krishna, 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 all good Shri Guru Gauranga Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
So you have the last paragraph. Read. Wait. Turn the light off.
Switch off the light.
You don't know where it is? Very good. Thank you. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Material activities and their results end with the body, but work in Krishna consciousness carries a person again to Krishna consciousness, even after the loss of the body. At least one is sure to have a chance in next life of being born again as a human being, either in the family of a great cultured Brahmana or in a rich aristocratic family, that they will give one a further chance of elevation. That is the unique quality of work done in Krishna consciousness.
Haribol. Very good. So you see, you're never a loser in Krishna consciousness, because whatever you do stays permanently with you, and the next time you start, if you do 1% in this life and stop, the next life you begin from 2%, and you're guaranteed a human birth. So that's the difference between material work and spiritual work.
But like, how to be sure that next life we will be having a human life?
And by engaging in devotional service in this life. And not engage in any sinful activities. That's the key. Right? Like there was a king named Indradumna. Obviously he must have made some mistake, because the next life he took birth as an elephant, Gajendra. And Gajendra was the one that got bitten by the alligator. You see that picture over there? By the crocodile, yeah. All right, so Kushi can tell the story. Go ahead, real quick. Microphone.
So there's this king named Indradumna. He wanted to go to the forest and do penance, and then one day while he was doing penance in the forest, a sage came, and then the King Indradumna did not greet him. He was too busy in his penance, and the sage got angry and cursed him to become an elephant in the next life. And then he was roaming in the forest as elephant in the next life, and then he found this king with a group, and Gajendra, the elephant, thought he would want to join the group, so he fought the king and he won basically, and so he became the king of elephants. And later, while he was walking to a lake, he was playing and he disturbed a crocodile while he was sleeping, and the crocodile got angry, and while he wasn't his other group got out of the lake, but while Gajendra was getting out, the crocodile came quickly and bit his leg, and then Gajendra was struggling and fighting with the elephant for hundreds of years.
With the alligator.
Yeah, alligator for 1,000 years, and his friends kept helping in the first years, but then they got too tired and knew they couldn't go for long, so they left the king behind. And then then Gajendra remembered his prayers from his last life, and then he started reciting it, and Lord Vishnu came and then cut off the alligator's neck, and Gajendra became Indradumna again, and the alligator was also a boy in the last life. Yeah, and then he pulled the Brahmana's legs, and then the Brahmana cursed him to become an alligator, and he got freed from that curse. And then Lord Vishnu asked, "I'm pleased by your service. What should I do for you?" And then King Indradumna said, I want nothing else other than going to having liberation."
Haribol. Very good. Okay, so now we'll go back. We're on verse 640, and we finished. We didn't finish it. It's a long purport. Yeah.
Okay, should I just read the purport?
Well, we finished the. We're in halfway in the second paragraph. Oh no, the first paragraph. Halfway the first paragraph.
Okay, right here.
So
Should I start from a transcendentalist is supposed to give up?
Okay.
Okay. A transcendentalist is supposed to give up all material activities for the sake of spiritual advancement in life, Krishna consciousness. One may argue that by Krishna consciousness one may attain the highest perfection of it is completed, but if one does not attain such a perfectional stage, then he loses both materially and spiritually. If it is enjoined in the scriptures that one has to suffer the reaction for not executing prescribed duties, therefore one who fails to discharge transcendental activities properly becomes subjected to these reactions. The Bhagavatam assures the unsuccessful transcendentalist that there need be no worries. Even though he may be subjected to the reaction for not perfectly executing prescribed duties, he is still not a loser, because auspicious Krishna consciousness is never forgotten, and one so engaged will continue to be so even if he is low-born in the next life. On the other hand, one who simply follows strictly the prescribed duties need not necessarily attain auspicious results if he is lacking in Krishna consciousness. The purport may be understood as follows. Humanity may be divided into two sections, namely the regulated and the non-regulated. Those who are engaged simply in the bestial sense gratifications
in bestial. Right?
In bestial?
Bestial.
Bestial.
Means animal-like.
Those who are engaged simply in bestial sense gratifications without knowledge of their next life or spiritual salvation belong to the non-regulated edge of their next life, or spiritual salvation belong
Wait a minute. Non-regulated section.
And those who follow the principles of prescribed duties in the scriptures.
Just a non-regulated section, both civilized, non-civilized.
No, this is, well, that's different.
Come on. And those who follow?
Yeah, those who follow the principles of prescribed duties. What? And those who follow the principles of prescribed duties in the scriptures are classified amongst the regulated section. The non-regulated section, both civilized and non-civilized, educated and non-educated, strong and weak, are full of animal propensities. Their activities are never auspicious because while enjoying the animal propensities of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating, they perpetually remain in material existence, which is always miserable. On the other hand, those who are regulated by scriptural injunctions and who thus rise gradually to Krishna consciousness certainly progress in life. Those who are
humanity's divided into two groups. Those who are regulated and those who are not regulated. Those who are regulated according to the scriptures, they have a chance for spiritual advancement. Those who are not regulated have no chance because they're engaged in bestial or animalistic activities, just eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So they always remain in material existence. But those who are regulated by scriptural injunctions, they have a chance to rise gradually to Krishna consciousness. Go ahead.
Shouldn't bestial be spelled B-E-A-S-T-I-L?
No.
Oh.
That's why English can be confusing sometimes.
Those who are following the path of auspiciousness can be divided into three sections, namely 1. The followers of scriptural rules and regulations who are enjoying material prosperity. 2. Those who are trying to find ultimate liberation from material existence. And 3. Those who are devotees in Krishna consciousness.
So now, those who are regulated, they can be divided into three categories. Those who are following the rules and regulations in order to enjoy material prosperity, and those who are following the regulative principles in order to attain liberation, and those who are devotees, who are not seeking material pleasures or liberation. They just want to please Krishna. Go ahead.
I have a question. Wouldn't like 2 and 3 be the same thing?
No. No.
Those who are following the rules and regulations of the scriptures for material happiness may be further divided into 2 classes.
Now, wait a minute. You know why 2 and 3 are not the same?
Why?
Okay, you're going to learn something new now. The jnanis who are seeking liberation differ from the devotees, because genuine devotees don't seek liberation. They just want to serve Krishna. They don't ask for anything. And Lord Chaitanya explains this: Nadanam, Najanam, Nasundarim, Kavitam Va Jagadisha Kamaye, Mama Janmani Janmani Swari, Bhavatad Bhakti Rahaitaki Dvai. And then Lord Chaitanya says that, oh, my Lord, I do not want any amount of wealth, nor do I want to enjoy beautiful women, nor do I want any number of followers. I simply want your causeless devotional service, birth after birth. So he doesn't want liberation. He doesn't want wealth. He doesn't want money, wealth. He doesn't want to have a lot of followers or a big family or a lot of disciples. He doesn't want anything, even liberation. He doesn't want to have sense gratification. He simply wants to serve the Lord. Whereas the jnani wants liberation, and the yogi wants mystical powers, and the karmi wants increased sense gratification. Okay?
Yeah. Those who are after fruitive results for sense gratification may be elevated to a higher standard of life, even to the higher planets, but still, because they are not free from material existence, they are not following the truly auspicious path. The only auspicious activities are those which lead one to liberation. Any activity which is not aimed at ultimate self-realization or liberation from the material bodily concept of life is not at all auspicious. Activity in Krishna, it doesn't matter. Activity in Krishna consciousness is the only auspicious activity, and anyone who voluntarily accepts all bodily discomforts for the sake of making progress on the path of Krishna consciousness can be called a perfect transcendentalist under severe austerity. And because the eightfold yoga system is directed toward the ultimate realization of Krishna consciousness, such practice is also auspicious, and no one who is trying his best in this matter need fear degradation.
Okay, so those who are following the rules and regulations for material happiness, that's number one above. You know, the followers of scriptural rules and regulations who are enjoying material prosperity, they're further divided into two classes. First class is those fruitive workers. Those are the people who want to actually enjoy the fruits. And second is they don't. The second group is those who don't want the fruits for sense gratification. So what does that mean? They don't want the fruits for sense gratification. That means they'll use the fruits of material prosperity for Krishna consciousness only. Whereas the first group will use the fruits of regulated activity for improved sense gratification. And that's why he says those who are after fruitive results for sense gratification may be elevated to a higher standard of life, even to the higher planets. But still, because they are not free from material existence, they are not following the truly auspicious path. These are mainly talking about Hindus. They are regulated. They follow the rules. But they follow the rules for improved or improvement in their material life. They know that if they follow the rules, they'll get most everything that they want in this life. And after death, they go to the higher planets for even better sense gratification. So they're working for sense gratification after death. Now and after death. So they're not, even though they're regulated, even though they follow the Vedas, they're not actually on an auspicious path. They don't look as bad as the outright karmis who don't follow any rules and are just interested in sense gratification. They're a higher class karmi. They follow the rules, but their goal is not like the second category of the people who follow the rules. What is the second category? They're following the rules for material prosperity, but they don't use it for sense gratification. They use that material prosperity for Krishna. You understand? In other words, you have two classes of people. Those who follow the rules of the Vedas and those who don't follow the rules. Of the people who follow the rules, you have three categories. Those who are following the rules for material prosperity, those who are following the rules for liberation, and then you have the devotees. And then those who are following the rules for material prosperity, they're divided again into two. Those who are following the rules of the Vedas so that they can enjoy material sense gratification here and after death, when they go to the higher planets. And then those who following the rules for material prosperity, but they don't use it for sense gratification. They use it to further Krishna consciousness. You got it clear now?
Huh?
Is it clear?
Yeah.
You can explain it? Yeah.
Second subcategory, do they go to heavenly planets or they are eventually
It says that they are on the auspicious path. That means they can progress to become pure devotees, yes. It's something like Lord Brahma himself. Lord Brahma is a devotee, but he still has a desire to dominate. It's not that he's completely free of all desires. So he's given a chance to dominate the whole material world and manage it on behalf of Krishna. Now he can do it properly, and if he does it properly, in the end of life he loses that desire to dominate and he goes back to Godhead. Just like in the history of our Brahma, he goes to see Krishna, and at the door he says, tell Krishna I'm here, I'm Brahma. So the doorman comes back and says, well, Krishna asked me to ask you, which Brahma are you? He said, what? What do you mean, which Brahma? I am the Brahma. Right? But when he showed into the audience of Krishna, he sees there's millions of other Brahmas. And he's not really as great as them because he's got 4 heads. There are other Brahmas with 1,000 heads, and there's even a Brahma with 1,000,000 heads. So his ego gets shrunk down, and he realizes, you know, he's not as great as he thought he was. So he can become purified and go back to Godhead at the end of life. Or if he just remains with that attachment to dominate, then he takes birth again.
Brahma is doing a service, right? He's doing a service to Krishna with his creation, and we have heard that after this dissolution, when after the complete dissolution, Brahma and everybody goes back to the Godhead.
But we also heard of the Brahma who became attracted to his daughter, Vak, and he had to give up his body and take on new body.
Wait, what?
You see? So everyone has a chance to purify themselves, but they can also make mistakes, even in the position of Brahma. And sometimes when there's no qualified person to take the position of Brahma, Krishna takes it himself, and he appears as Lord Brahma. So there's no magic, there's no formula here. You see, one has to actually be purged of all material desires and have only desires to please the Lord. Then it's pure devotional service, then they go back to Godhead. Even if there's one whiff, one little hint of a material desire, they can't leave. Yes?
When Indra bashed down a lot of rain on Govardhan Hill, when Krishna was lifting it up, did they choose a new Indra or something?
No, he became purified, don't you remember? When after Krishna lifted Govardhan, Indra realized that he was defeated, and he came and surrendered to Krishna, and then the Surabhi bathed him with pure milk from her udder, and then he began to speak beautiful prayers glorifying the Lord. So he became purified. Right? Why? Because he came in contact with Krishna. Whether you come in contact with Krishna favorably or unfavorably, you become purified. So Krishna's mercy, when he kills a demon, the demons achieve the same type of, let's say, benefit as the devotees. They're liberated, but they might get liberated into the Brahman rather than liberated into Goloka. But they are liberated, even though they were trying to kill Krishna. Because Krishna kills them, they become purified. Okay, so this is a big purport. It has a lot of points here, and it's good to understand them. Any activity which is not aimed at ultimate self-realization or liberation from the material bodily concept of life is not at all auspicious. Activity in Krishna consciousness is the only auspicious activity, and anyone who voluntarily accepts all bodily discomforts for the sake of making progress on the path of Krishna consciousness can be called a perfect transcendentalist under severe austerity. And because the Eightfold Yoga system is directed toward ultimate realization of Krishna consciousness, such practice is also auspicious, and no one who is trying his best in this matter need fear degradation. So in other words, there's not going to be any losers whether you follow the Eightfold Yoga system correctly, and that's explained also. That was explained also earlier, the correct way to follow it, or if you just engage in devotional service.
That's true, probably, because in material life, like till now, like what I have lived, we have not seen any benefit out of that.
Yeah, there's no benefit. No benefit. You can follow all the rules.
Yeah.
In other words, don't lie, don't cheat, so forth. But without developing love of Krishna, it's just moral, just following moral codes. And the problem is, smart people figure out I can get more sense gratification by following the rules. Those are the smart people. The dumbheads, they think I can get more sense gratification by not following the rules. I say, but actually no. By following the rules, you have better sense gratification. But that's not the purpose of following the rules. Following the rules, the purpose is to please Krishna. Work for Krishna's sense gratification. Right? Okay, next one. Prapya punya kritam lokan kusitva sasvati sama suchinam srimatam gehe yoga brasto vijayate. Who's reading now? Okay. Microphone.
Translation. The unsuccessful yogi, after many years of enjoyment on the planets of pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people, or into a family of rich aristocracy. Yeah. Purport. The unsuccessful yogis are divided into two classes. One is fallen after very little progress, and one is fallen after long practice of yoga.
They're both fallen.
The yogi who falls after a short period of practice goes to the higher planets, where pious living entities are allowed to enter. After prolonged life there, one is sent back again to this planet to take birth in the family of a righteous Brahman, Vaishnava, or of aristocratic merchants.
So we should tell the Muslims this. They don't have to put a belt of explosive and blow themselves up. They should just become a yogi, right? They'll say, the Muslims will say, oh, well, but we do yoga. Every time we do the namas, it's yoga. We go up and then we go down and we go spread and we come back. It's like yoga practice, right? But no, it's not. That's something, but it's not real yoga practice. So the yogis who just do a little bit of yoga, they fall down after a short period of practice. They go to the higher planets and they enjoy tremendously for a long time, and then they come down again. So, go ahead.
The real purpose of yoga practice is to achieve the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, as explained in the last verse of this chapter. But those who do not persevere.
That means stay for the long haul, tolerate all difficulties, and not give up.
But those who do not persevere to such an extent, and who fail because of material allurements, are allowed, by the grace of the Lord, to make full utilization of their material propensities, and after that they are given opportunities to live prosperous lives in righteous or aristocratic families, Those who are born in such families may take advantage of the facilities and try to elevate themselves to full Krishna consciousness.
So they get all kinds of material, full utilization of their material propensities. In other words, they engage in yoga, but they don't persevere. They don't reach the goal of it, that is Krishna consciousness. So, because of material allurements, they became attracted to something, just like Bharat Maharaj became attracted to the deer and broke his, let's say, progressive march toward Krishna. He was already at the stage of bhava, but he didn't go all the way to prema because he became attached to that deer, so he fell down. So, after they have full utilization of their material propensities, meaning after they enjoy heavenly pleasures, I guess, they're given opportunities to live prosperous lives in righteous aristocratic families. In other words, when they come back down from the heavenly planets, they take birth in wealthy or pious or aristocratic wealthy families. And then they can take advantage of the facilities they have. They don't have to work hard. Or they're born in a righteous family, so right away they're introduced to Krishna consciousness. Or they're born in a rich family, they don't have to work hard, and so forth. And they can try to elevate themselves, but it's not guaranteed. Because they already fell down being allured to material sense gratification one time, so it could happen again. It's not guaranteed. Go ahead.
Many times we gave example of Ajamil,
Yeah.
which is on one extreme,
Yeah.
and Bharat Maharaj on another extreme. So
Yes. Yes.
So it's like seeing that we are suiting the situation, like where a situation fits.
No. What you should see in those two examples is the absolute power of the holy name. It's not that there's a big tent and everybody can fit in it, the sinners and the devotees. That's not the idea. That we have merchandise for everybody. No. The idea is the power of the holy name. The holy name is absolute. Whether you have a completely sinful life and at the last moment of life you accidentally say the holy name without any malice, without any material desire, you get purified. Or you're following all the rules and regulations and you're sincere about it, but you become attracted to something material and you fall down.
Bharat Maharaj thing doesn't seem to be like a self-gratification type of thing.
Yes, it was. His attachment to that little deer was all sense gratification. If you read carefully that story, you'll see he went crazy with his attachment to the deer. He actually became insane for over-attachment to the deer, and he completely ignored his spiritual duties. And then in the last moment of life, he was thinking of the deer. He wasn't thinking of Krishna. But you're never a loser. That's the point. There's 2 points here. The absolute power of the holy name and the fact that you're never a loser in Krishna consciousness. Even if you fall down, you're still not a loser. You see my point? Those are the 2 things you should take away from it. Not that there's a big tent and everybody can come into that tent. It doesn't matter if you're a big sinner or you're a good guy. That's true also, but it's not the point. The point is, Jamil, the absolute power of the holy name. How did he chant the holy name? He was calling out his son, so he wasn't praying to God for some material benefit. He just said the name without any ulterior motive. He was calling for his son. He wasn't even calling for Narayana, but because he named his son Narayana due to his previous education as a Brahmana, the holy name acted. In the case of Bharat Maharaj, he was very advanced. It was what's called the penultimate point. Penultimate is the point right before the highest point, right? But he became allured or attracted to that little deer, and then he developed mundane affection for the deer, and it interrupted his spiritual progress. But he got a chance to correct himself also. So even though he took the body of a deer in his next life, he had memory of his previous life. Right. And then eventually he went back to Godhead. Yeah. Okay. So, text 42.
Shall I continue?
Kushi wants to read. Kushi, come out from underneath the chair and read.
You read so good. You should.
You're very good. You read better when you're not under the chair.
Attava yogam eva kvale bhakti vati bhavati no
Dimatam.
dimatam
Itadi durlabharam bhataram loke janma yad idrasam. Go ahead. Read the English.
Or if unsuccessful after long practice of yoga, he takes birth in a family transcendentalist who are surely great in wisdom. Certainly such a birth is rare in this world.
Okay, so there's three things that happen. Either the unsuccessful yogi, after long practice of yoga, can either he can go to the heavenly planets and enjoy heavenly pleasures, and then he comes back down to the earth and he can take birth either in a righteous family or an aristocratic rich family. And now the third possibility, he can take birth in a family of transcendentalists. Okay, so three things can happen to that unsuccessful yogi after a long practice. Go ahead.
Birth in a family of yogis or transcendentalists, those who with great wisdom is praised herein, because the child born in such a family receives a spiritual impetus from the very beginning of his life. It is especially the case in the Acharya or Goswami families. Such families are very learned and devoted by tradition, training, and thus they become spiritual masters. In India, there are many such Acharya families, but they have now degenerated due to the insufficient education and training. By the grace of the Lord, there are still families that foster transcendentalists generation after generation. It is certainly very fortunate to take birth in such families. Fortunately, both are spiritual master. Om Vishnu Pada Shrimad Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj in her humble self had the opportunity to take birth In such families, by the grace of the Lord, and both of us were trained in the devotional service of the Lord from the very beginning of our life. Later on, we met the transcendental system. Met by the order of the transcendental system.
Very good, Krishi. You're one of those transcendentalists. You took a birth in a transcendentalist family, so that from a very early age, you've been introduced to Krishna consciousness. How old are you now?
7 3/4.
Wow, you're lucky. I wish I was 7 3/4 with a mommy teaching me Krishna consciousness. Okay. Tatratam buddhisam yogam labate porvadehikam yatate cha tato bhuya samsiddho kurunandana. Translation: on taking such a birth, he revives the divine consciousness of his previous life, and he again tries to make further progress in order to achieve complete success, O son of Kuru. Go.
King Bharata, who took his third birth in the family of a good Brahmana, is an example of good birth for the revival of previous transcendental consciousness. King Bharata was the emperor of the world, and since his time, this planet has been known among the demigods as Bharata Varsha. Formerly, it was known as Ivitra Varsha. Is it?
Ilavrita.
Ilavrita Varsha. The emperor, at an early age, retired for spiritual perfection but failed to achieve success. In his next life, he took birth in the family of a good Brahmana and was known as Jada Bharata because he always remained secluded and did not talk to anyone. And later on, he was discovered as the greatest transcendentalist by King Rahugana. From his life, it is understood that transcendental endeavors or the practice of yoga never go in vain.
That's the point, see? Nahabhikramanastas, never go in vain. You're never a loser. Go ahead.
By the grace of the Lord, the transcendentalists get repeated opportunities for complete perfection in Krishna consciousness.
Purva vyasena tenaiva hriyate hi avasopisa jigasurapi yogasya sabda brahma tivartate. By virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. You want to read? $44. If you come over here, you can get the microphone. Over here.
By the virtue of the divine consciousness of his previous life, he automatically becomes attracted to the yogic principles, even without seeking them. Such an inquisitive transcendentalist stands always above the ritualistic principles of the scriptures. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Advanced yogis are not very much attracted to the rituals of the scriptures, but they automatically become attracted to the yoga principles, which can elevate them to complete Krishna consciousness, the highest yoga perfection. In Srimad Bhagavatam 333.7, such disregard of Vedic rituals by the advanced transcendentalist is explained as follows. You want to read?
Aho bata swapakoto gariyan yajchivagre vartate namatubhyam tepus tapas te jehuvahur sasnurarya brahmanachur nama grinanti yete.
O my Lord, persons who chant the holy names of your Lordship are far, far advanced in spiritual life, even if born in families of dog-eaters. Such chanters have undoubtedly performed all kinds of austerities and sacrifices, bathed in all sacred places, and finished all scriptural studies. The famous example of this was presented by Lord Chaitanya, who accepted Thakur Haridas as one of his most important disciples. Although Thakur Haridas happened to take his birth in a Muslim family, he was elevated to the post of Namacharya of Lord Chaitanya due to his rigidly attended principle of chanting 300,000 holy names of the Lord daily. Hare Krishna, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And because he chanted the holy name of the Lord constantly, it is understood that in his previous life he must have passed through all the ritualistic methods of the Vedas known as Shabd Brahma. Unless therefore one is purified, one cannot take to the principles of Krishna consciousness or become engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord Hare Krishna.
Prayatna yatmanas yata manastu yogi samsuda kilvasa aneka janma samsidas tatoyati param gatim. Okay, so who's going to read? You read.
And when the yogi engages himself with sincere endeavor in making further progress, being washed of all contaminations, then ultimately achieving perfection after many births of practice, he attains the supreme goal. Purport: a person born in a particular righteous, aristocratic or sacred family becomes conscious of his favorable conditions for executing yoga practice, which determination therefore he begins his unfinished task, and thus he completely cleans himself of all material contamination. When he finally free from all contamination, he attains the supreme perfection, Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is the perfect stage of being freed of all contamination. Freed of all contamination. This is confirmed in Bhagavad-Gita 7.28.
Yesam tvantakatam papam jananam punyakarmanam tejvandva mohanirmukta bhajante mam dhritarataha.
After many births of executing pious activities, when one is completely freed from all contamination and from all illusory dualities, one becomes engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord.
Tasab tapasvidvyo diko yogi yanipyo pimato dikaha karmi vyas chadiko yogi tasmat yogi bhavarjuna. A yogi is greater than the ascetic, greater than the empiricist, and greater than the fruit of worker. Therefore, O Arjuna, in all circumstances, be a yogi. Go ahead.
So, Prabhu, this yogi, is it talking about the one who wants liberation, who meditates, or the one, any yogi, like if the devotee is connected to Krishna, is that?
Yeah, that's why I said this was explained earlier in this chapter, and I'll if you go to 6 chapters 20 to 23. When we talk about yoga, we're talking about Patanjali Yoga Sutras, right? So, if you look into that purport, it says, yoga practice, it's in the first paragraph near the beginning, yoga practice is more or less based on the principles of the Patanjali system. Some unauthorized commentators try to identify the individual soul with the supersoul, and the monists think this to be liberation. But they do not understand the real purpose of the Patanjali system of yoga. There is an acceptance of transcendental pleasure in the Patanjali system, but the monists do not accept this transcendental pleasure out of fear of jeopardizing the theory of oneness. The duality of knowledge and knower is not accepted by the non-dualist. So non-dualist means the Mayavadi. But in this, in other words, the knower and knowledge are two different things, right? But in this verse, transcendental pleasure realized through transcendental senses is accepted. In other words, in this verse today, in this verse 6, 621 says, Sukham aityantikam yat tat. That means happiness, supreme happiness by intelligence is accessible and it's transcendental. Okay, that's what that line means there. Now hold on to that line because it's essential. There are people who follow Patanjali Yoga who are absolute Mayavadis. So they think that at the highest stage of realization they become Paramatma, right? But that's not what Patanjali was teaching. They have misinterpreted him. So here Prabhupada's going to explain that. The duality of knowledge and knower is not accepted by the non-dualist. But in this verse, transcendental pleasure, realized through transcendental senses, is accepted. And this is corroborated by Patanjali Muni. This is corroborated. In other words, he says the same thing as what's being said here, Sukham aityantikam yatat, buddhigraham atindriyam. He's saying the same thing as Krishna, even though people who follow him have misinterpreted him. And what is it saying? And this is corroborated by Patanjali Muni, the famous exponent of the yoga system. The great sage declares in his Yoga Sutras 334. You see how precise Prabhupada is. He knows Patanjali's Yoga Sutras also. Purushartha sunyanam gunanam patiprasava kaivalyam swarupa pratistava chitti shaktir iti. And Prabhupada says, this chitti shakti or internal potency is transcendental. Purushartha means material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and at the end the attempt to become one with the Supreme. This oneness with the Supreme is called kaivalyam by the monist. But according to Patanjali, this kaivalyam, which he mentions in that verse from the Yoga Sutras, is an internal or transcendental potency by which the living entity becomes aware of his constitutional position. That is, he experiences transcendental happiness because he sees his relationship to Paramatma. Not that he sees that he is Paramatma, right? And then he says, in the words of Lord Chaitanya, this state of affairs is called Cheto Darpana Marjanam, or clearance of the impure mirror of the mind. In other words, one becomes purified. Well, so two things can happen to Patanjali's followers. The ones that are Mayavadis, they don't get purified, they get corrupted, and they think, I am Paramatma. But the sincere followers, when they see Paramatma, they become very happy because they realize, I'm the eternal servant of Paramatma. And they become purified of that ego, of that false ego. In the words of Lord Chaitanya, this state of affairs is called Cheto Darpana Marjanam. So he's equating this to Patanjali's Pratistava Chitti Shaktir, this Chitti Shaktir, internal potency, transcendental potency. It's not simply following the four principles of Vedic path of material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and then becoming one with the Supreme. The real oneness with the Supreme is realizing that I'm the eternal servant of the Lord, and one becomes happy when they realize that. That's the meaning of Anandamaya Bhyasat. It's a happy feeling when you realize I'm the eternal servant. Just like Brahma, when he realized he's the eternal servant of Krishna, he became happy and he became full of knowledge and of his constitutional position. So this is the clearance of the impure mirror of the mind. So this clearance is actually liberation, or Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapana. Now, he just talked about Patanjali. He talked about Lord Chaitanya. Now he's going to talk about Lord Buddha. The theory of nirvana, also preliminary, corresponds with this principle of the clearance of the mind of the false ego. In the Bhagavatam 2.10.6, this is called Swarupena Vyavastiti. So now he connected Bhagavatam, Buddha, Patanjali, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. You see, it's a brilliant purport. It took me about 40 years to try and figure out what this purport means. I read it many times. I never really understood what it meant. I don't claim to understand it now either, but it's very profound what Prabhupada has done here. The Bhagavad-Gita also confirms this situation. Now it ties in the Bhagavad-Gita. Sukham atyantikam yatat buddhi grayam atendriya. So it connected now Bhagavad-Gita, Bhagavatam, and Buddhism, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and Patanjali in this one paragraph. Okay, so that's what he's talking about. And what your question was, what was your question again?
That yogi means what Patanjali is referring to is to get the internal potency or that transcendental pleasure, but the non-dualists, they think that...
Yeah, the real follower of Patanjali attains the clearance of the mind of all misconceptions.
So my question was, this yogi was the one who is going for the liberation, so that means this yogi means both, if they have the clear understanding of it in 6.1.
Well, no, real liberation. Okay, this is another interesting point, and you're going to like this. Let's talk about what real liberation is. This is 18th chapter, verse number 55. Yeah, so real liberation, if you look at the purport, the last paragraph.
Just next to that.
Actually, the last line of this of the purport. Actual liberation is getting free from misconceptions of life. That's what real liberation is.
Getting away from the Maya itself.
Huh? Yeah. All the misconceptions, everything we learn wrong in our life. It's hard. It's not easy. It's almost impossible. It's only possible by pure devotional service. And it says real devotional liberation in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Real devotional liberation is defined as the reinstatement of the living entity in his own identity, his own constitutional position. Swarupena vivastiti, that's second canto. Okay?
That's true for the actual liberation is getting free from misconception of life.
Yeah, that's real.
You can see everything clearly in life.
Yeah, the false followers of Patanjali, they go deeper into the Maya. And the last moment, after they've gone through all the tapasya and everything they did, and they learned all the sutras, and they did all the yogas and everything, in the last moment, they think they're Paramatma. In other words, they go deeper into illusion rather than come out of illusion. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. Okay, so now, any other questions?
So, Prabhuji, in verse 644, we read last line. Unless, therefore, one is purified, one cannot take the principles of Krishna consciousness or become engaged in chanting the holy name of Lord.
Okay, this is a paraphrase of 729. Yesam twantakatam papam, 28, 728.
So how?
Yananam punya karmanam te dvandva mohanir mukta bhajanti mam jitarataha. It says, persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination. So he's paraphrasing that. Therefore, Unless, therefore, one is purified, one cannot take to the principles of Krishna consciousness or become engaged in chanting the holy name of the Lord, Hare Krishna.
So Prabhuji, my question is, how one will get purified is by doing
by
pious
chanting and associating with devotees, taking prasadam, and emptying your pockets to pay off the mortgage. That's the best way, fastest way. Just empty your pocket. Take a checkbook out, and write a big check. I'm just joking. It's by chanting and associating with the devotees, taking prasadam, and engaging in practical devotional service. You get purified very quickly, actually. Very, very quickly. Prabhupada explains that. He says in his purport, if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat sevam dwaram ahur vimukte. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence, tamodwaram yosita sangisangam. All the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. The impersonalists do not know that forgetting their constitutional position as subordinate to the Supreme Lord is the greatest violation of God's law. Unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead or to be fully engaged in His transcendental loving service with determination. So you have to be engaged wholeheartedly in devotional service. All right, we'll leave the last verse for next time. Oh, one other thing I wanted to show you. Remember on 640 we read that verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Tyaktva Swadharmam Charanam Bhujam Harer. Then we went to 240 and we saw the same verse, right? But it's not translated the same way. Compare them. I mean, the meaning is the same, but I find the one in 240 more understandable. And Prabhupada does this a lot. He does it a lot. So in 240 he translates, if someone gives up his occupational duties and works in Krishna consciousness and then falls down on account of not completing his work, what loss is there on his part? And what can one gain if one performs his material duties perfectly? Or as the Christians say, what profiteth a man if he gain the whole world yet suffers the loss of his eternal soul? Material activities and their results end with the body, but work in Krishna consciousness carries a person again to Krishna consciousness even after the loss of the body. At least one is sure to have a chance in the next life of being born again as a human being, either in the family of great cultured brahmanas or in a rich aristocratic family that will give one further chance for elevation. This is the unique quality of work done in Krishna consciousness. So if you want to be a born-again Christian, you join Krishna consciousness. You'll be born again. In the next life, even if you fall down, you'll be born again in the family of devotees. So you see that the translation is a little different. In 640 it says, if someone gives up all material prospects and takes complete shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there's no loss or degradation in any way. On the other hand, a devotee may fully engage in his occupational duties and yet not gain anything. So it's a slight different way of translating it. It means the same thing. But he switched it around. See, in 640 he begins with the position of a devotee, and in 240 he begins with the position of the materialist. Okay, well, we'll stop right there because we're going to have another program now. Every Saturday and Sunday, it's non-stop Krishna consciousness. All glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Hari Bol.
Probably how, when I read purport,
That's why you should read me.
no, my question here is probably, When you read, it feels that it's coming from your heart, and you believe every word in it, and my mind start doubting about it.
Well, then don't read with me then.
No, I have to read with you.
Many times that happens, really, I must have read that word purport earlier, but when I'm reading along with you or in the class, it gives different vision suddenly. Okay, this is something different I didn't see earlier.
It took me 40 years to understand that purport.
Every time.
I read it many times. It's never connected. It's only in the last couple of years that I began to understand it better. I don't claim to understand it perfectly.
Going to the story,
Right.
so it was amazing basically.
Yeah, she reads.
Yeah.
She's good. That's an amazing story. I read the whole thing this morning. That's amazing stories. Amazing pastime. Okay, well now we're going to the next program.
बड़े